with Busy Garden Life, and it is the Sunday before Thanksgiving. So today I am prepping and getting things ready for the day of. Now we host every year. I like to stay home for the holidays. It's easier with 4 kids in the hustle and bustle of everyday life. I just like to be home. So even if I'm in the kitchen cooking all day, it's much more enjoyable than running around and going everywhere. We always encourage any family members, if they want to come over, they are more than welcome to. Steve's sister usually does every year, so they at least come over for dinner. Otherwise, I like to stay home. And with that comes a lot of prepping and preparing for the Thanksgiving meal. I also like to make a nice breakfast. I usually do 2 different quiches, a bacon, onion, and a sausage onion quiche in the morning, and I'll just serve it with some fruit for the kids. For lunch, we kind of just do appetizers. We start throwing some appetizers out, eat the rest of the breakfast, and then have Thanksgiving dinner. So we really just do like 2 big meals that day. But to make that day a lot easier and enjoyable so that I can actually have enjoy some time with the kids and my husband and family, and not just stressing about kitchen, I like to do these 5 things ahead of time. First one is cleaning out the fridge. So I've gone through and kind of gotten rid of any leftovers that we are not going to eat the rest of the week. I got them out so that I can clean up the fridge and put some of the things that I'm prepping in there, and also get it ready for just the rest of the week so it doesn't get too crowded. Number 2, I have gone through my list of, where is my list? I gotta show you. I have a list of what I need for Thanksgiving. I know it seems crazy, but we typically do the same thing every year. My husband and his sister are very traditional and like the original mashed potatoes and gravy with the turkey and corn casserole, green bean casserole, stuffing, rolls, and we also do some buttered noodles, homemade, to kind of add to the meal. But otherwise, we keep it pretty simple, and I actually like it that way because the recipes aren't too much, and I can prep a little bit ahead of time. In the day of, they're pretty easy to make. And my sister-in-law comes over, and she, when they get here, she kind of helps put things together, and we just enjoy the time in the kitchen as well. But today, I have gone through my list and made sure that I have all the ingredients ready. And with that, I have gone through and I have pulled out anything that needs to be thawed or softened and made sure that it is ready to go. So we're doing a fresh turkey. I don't have to pull that out, but if you are not doing a fresh turkey, if it's frozen, make sure you're getting it out of your freezer now, because even now it might be questionable on whether it'll be thawed, especially if it's a bigger turkey. But we got our turkey this year from raising it, and then we're gonna brine it starting Tuesday night. I like to brine it for at least 36 hours in a pound of salt and a cup of brown sugar. But with that, I also needed some sausage for the quiche and for the stuffing. I got bacon out. I have put my cream cheese out on the counter so that it's softened for the cheese ball, and the pepper jelly that we're gonna use for appetizers. And then I also have my butter out for the rolls. Make sure you get that stick of butter so it's nice and soft to spread on your rolls the night of. And I've also made some sourdough bread, so I have just kind of letting that cool. I'm gonna cut that up and cube it when it's done, and then that way I can let it dry for the next couple days and use it for the stuffing. If you just use pre-made bread, you obviously don't have to worry about that, but I like to use homemade bread with the stuffing. It just kind of takes it up another notch. So you want to make sure that you have gotten all of the ingredients out. I believe that was number 3. I kind of mixed the number 2 and number 3 together. Number 4 is to start chopping all of your veggies. All right, so I have kind of gotten the onions chopped here. I've got cucumbers for the appetizers with some salmon and some dill dip. I have peeled my potatoes. This is a huge one when you're prepping, right? Peeling potatoes can take so much time, especially if you have a lot of them. I peel, chop them, and then I cover them with water and I put them in the pot. You can put this in the refrigerator if you have room. Otherwise, I'm setting it outside the back door because it's cold enough that it'll keep everything cold. So I have that all ready. I've already chopped up a little bit of a jalapeno for our corn casserole. Celery, I have freeze-dried celery, so I'm just gonna grab a cup of that the day of. But anything that you can do ahead of time, chopping, preparing, mixing, go ahead and do that today. That way the day of, you can just kind of toss it all together into the casseroles or the dishes and bake it and get it ready to go. And then the number 5 thing that I'm sharing with you today and going to give you my recipe is to prepare your pie shells ahead of time, or even your dough. So if you're making your own rolls, you can do your dough ahead of time, or just get up early in the morning and do it the day of if you want. But if you want to skip that step, you can make it ahead of time and just put it in the freezer or the refrigerator, okay? So I'm going to show you my pie crust recipe. We do 2 quiches in the morning, and then I do an apple pie for dessert. We also do a Mississippi mud pie, which I know is not traditional for Thanksgiving, but my husband and the kids love the chocolate pie. So we just do the apple and the chocolate pie. So for Thanksgiving, I'm gonna need 3 pie shells, and my recipe is from Martha Stewart's Pies and Tarts book. It's delicious. It's super easy, and one recipe makes 2 crusts. So I'm actually going to go ahead and make 3 batches today. One for the quiches in the morning, and then we do quiche for Christmas morning. So I'm gonna go ahead and make that recipe, and I can pop those 2 in the freezer, and just a couple days before Christmas, I can get them out and get them ready. And then I'm gonna make the 3rd batch for my apple pie crust, and then my family's coming over and we're gonna have some rhubarb pie because it's my stepdad's favorite, and I have rhubarb left over from the garden. So I'm gonna make that 3rd batch in order to make the pies for the holidays. The other one, and again, I'll just pop one of those in the freezer. The best part about this dough is you can put it in the freezer for up to a couple months. That way it's ready for you. But as of right now, for Thanksgiving, I can just put it right into the refrigerator and it'll be ready, beforehand. I'm probably gonna pull it out the night before to at least roll it out. All right, so I'm going to show you my easy pie crust recipe. We're gonna get that going. I usually make like my Mississippi mud pie. I will make that on Tuesday night, a couple days ahead of time. That way it has time to settle, and it's one less thing that I have to do the day of as well. So if you're making a pie like that, even like an apple pie, I could make that on Tuesday and have that ready to go as well. So you can make your pies a couple days ahead of time and just kind of store them in the refrigerator until it's ready to go. So let's head on over and start our pie crust recipe. Okay, so we are ready to make our dough. I am going to start by adding 2.5 cups of flour. I just use my food processor. You can do this by hand, using a pastry cutter to blend in the butter, but it's so easy just to use your food processor. So we want 2.5 cups of flour to start with. Two and a half. So for Christmas, my Christmas list this year, I don't know if you guys have like a want or a need, but there's this food processor called the Paradise by Breville that is out, and it dices. It doesn't just slice and shred and mix things together. It dices fruits and vegetables as well. So I'm anxious to see, 1, if I get it, 2, if it works as well as it says it does, because it looks like you can dice it in 3 different sizes. So, you know, for dicing onions and celery and tomatoes, for diced tomatoes, it just looks like it's super easy to go through. And man, I can't imagine how much time it'll save me in the kitchen every week when I meal prep. All right, so we're gonna add 1 teaspoon of salt and 1 teaspoon of sugar. All right, I'm gonna see too if I can, I'm gonna move the camera so you can actually see what it's going to look like. I'm just gonna mix this very gentle, kind of mix it all together initially. Okay, let's make some room over here. There we go, that's better. I had to make some sourdough bread this morning for the stuffing, so I'm waiting for that to cool, and then I'm going to cube that up and let it dry out as well so that I have that ready to go. That's another thing, if you're having stuffing, make sure that you get the bread out to dry up if you aren't buying a prepackaged. I like the homemade bread, it's so good, especially sourdough bread. Okay, so we've got our dry ingredients. Now we're going to add cold unsalted butter. You want 2 sticks of cold unsalted butter, and I'm just gonna kind of chop them into little chunks here and throw them in there. So we just wanna kind of pulse it a little bit to kind of break up some of the butter chunks, but not too much. That you want some bigger chunks of the butter in there after you do it, because that is what makes it flaky. Oh, this is sticking to my knife today. I don't know what's going on here. Doesn't ever do that. Now, when you are using the dough, since you don't have, unless you have the Martha Stewart book in front of you, when you use it, what you want to do is, we're going to put it in the refrigerator. So after you make it, you do want to make sure that it's in the refrigerator and gets cold, so that butter that we're kind of pulsing and working together, you want it to be nice and cold again before you start like spreading it out, rolling it out. And then what I usually do is after I roll it out into the disc that I need it to, the size that I need to, put it in my pie shell or my tart pans, then you put it back in the refrigerator for another half hour or so. You want it to kind of firm up again and get nice and flaky. So it's kind of like a long process. That's why I like doing this part ahead of time. That way it's nice and cold. And then for rolling out the crust, I actually like to do it the night before. So Wednesday night or even Tuesday night, I can get it out and I can roll the dough and put it in the pans. That way, so like for my quiches, the morning of, everything's rolled out and all I have to do is make the inside of it. I can start baking it a little bit to get the crust on the bottom golden brown. And then I can, while it's baking for a little bit, I can add or make all of my insides, the eggs, the bacon, onions, you know, whatever you want inside your quiche. Kind of same thing for the pie. I like to do the pie in the morning so I can get the pie out, I can get the crust out, and I can just add the insides right away and bake it. So it saves you that waiting time of putting it back in the refrigerator after you roll it out if you do it a day or two ahead of time as well. So you can see how making the dough ahead really helps from the day of. All right, so I'm gonna add the butter, finish chopping up the butter and add it, and then we will pulse it a little bit. Okay, so we have added all of the butter. We're going to pulse it, and we just want it to be like a coarse, kind of like a coarse meal type thing. You do want some bigger chunks of butter still in there. So let me pulse this up and then I'll show you kind of what it looks like. over here, you can see there's like some nice bigger chunks like this. Here's a nice big chunk of butter. You kind of want it to look just nice and coarse like that. All the butter pieces are incorporated with some bigger ones. All right, so the last thing we're gonna do is add some ice cold water. So typically I get like a 1/3 cup of water and then I put like 2 ice cubes in it. And that way it kind of melts it a little bit, but then it's nice and cold. You wanna make sure that the ice does not go into the mixture, obviously. So if you need to fish it out, if it's still not thawed, you can fish it out there. There we go. And then you're just gonna add about a 1/4 cup to begin with. You don't wanna add too much. And then you can add a little bit, tablespoon or teaspoon at a time as you go. And you just wanna pulse it so that the dough kind of starts coming together. Still pretty dry, so we're going to add a little bit more water here. You could measure it out a tablespoon at a time. I kind of just eyeball it. You can see how when you squish it, it's starting to form together there. It's still a little dry. I might add a little bit more water just so that it'll stay a little bit more, but that's almost there. We're almost there. I don't want to add, I'm not even adding a tablespoon this time, just a tad. All right, there we go. There we go. That's it. So it's kind of coming together, sticking together. Perfect. All right, so what we're gonna do now is we are going to lay this out on saran wrap, and we're going to kind of make it a ball and then shape it into discs so that we can put it into the refrigerator. All right, so we got some saran wrap out. Got 2 pieces here, and then we're just gonna divide it in half. As equal as possible. Doesn't have to be perfect. You can see it does not take long at all to get this going. So if you've always been worried about making your own pie crust and if it's gonna turn out, the hardest part is rolling it out, if you ask me. But get yourself a nice heavy rolling pin and it rolls out a lot easier. Okay. So what I like to do, I'm gonna add another little chunk over here. What I like to do is kind of just gather it all together as much as possible. Kind of squish it all together there. All right. And then once I do that, I'll roll it back out a little bit. And then I'll just take the saran wrap, wrap it around it, and just kind of flatten it out into a nice disc here. So it's all stuck together. Now, if it ends up being too dry, you can add more water. If it ends up being too wet, you can add a little bit more flour as you're kneading it and rolling it out. So it is pretty forgiving in that sense. So, all right, so I have that disc, and then same thing over here. And I like doing it all at once so that I'm only having to clean the food processor once, right? So you don't have to get it out every single time you want to use it. For the holidays, it's super nice. All right, so I still have 2 more batches of this to make, so I'm gonna get to making those. Otherwise, we have kind of finished up some of our Thanksgiving prep. I hope this helps you if you are hosting for Thanksgiving to decrease some of your stress. I have learned these tricks over the last couple years of hosting Thanksgiving and hosting just parties in general. We like to host a lot, so for me, I've always kind of found these tips and tricks to make it easier throughout the week and the day of the hosting so that I can enjoy it too. We don't want it to be over stressful where you can't enjoy the party with everybody else. So just to kind of recap, make sure that refrigerator's cleaned out, make sure you have all of your ingredients, go through your list and get everything out and make sure that you have it ahead of time, what you need to cook in, the oil, what you need to, get out ahead of time, make sure that you just have all of it ready to go. Make sure that you are getting your meat out so that it has time to thaw, and anything that needs to be out on the counter softening, get that out as well. Make any doughs ahead of time, breads ahead of time, kind of get that all ready to go. And last but not least, start chopping all of the vegetables and potatoes, peeling the potatoes and chopping those up and getting everything kind of prepped as much as you can so the day of, all you have to do is throw it together in the casserole dish and bake it. So hopefully this helps. If you have tips and tricks that you have learned from hosting, drop them in the comments so that we can share that below. Otherwise, happy Thanksgiving, and we will see you next time.